Morning routines have long been recognized as a critical foundation for human well-being, not merely in anecdotal lifestyle literature, but also in a growing body of multidisciplinary research spanning psychology, chronobiology, behavioral science, and public health. The early hours of the day present a uniquely malleable cognitive and physiological landscape in which habits, once established, exert disproportionate influence over mood regulation, cognitive performance, metabolic function, and long-term health outcomes. This is partly because morning behaviors often initiate a cascade of secondary habits that persist throughout the rest of the day, thereby functioning as keystone habits in the ecological system of daily life. The idea of cultivating 7 morning habits to promote healthier living is not an arbitrary numerical exercise, but reflects an attempt to synthesize diverse empirical findings into a manageable, adaptable, and evidence-informed behavioral template. These habits, though varied in their mechanisms, share a common orientation. They help synchronize internal physiological processes, sharpen mental clarity, stabilize emotional equilibrium, and strengthen an individual's sense of agency over the structure of their day. By exploring the psychological, biological, and social reasoning behind these practices, one gains insight into why such habits not only support immediate daily functioning but also accumulate into profound, long-term transformations. The first point of consideration is the psychological architecture of human habits. A morning routine, when consistently repeated, becomes encoded not merely as a behavioral script but as an identity-shaping system. Self-perception theory suggests that individuals infer aspects of their identity by observing their own behavior. When one engages in health-oriented actions early in the day, the mind begins reinforcing the implicit narrative of being a disciplined, health-conscious individual. This narrative then increases the likelihood of additional health-congruent decisions throughout the day, a phenomenon supported by the behavioral spillover effect. Similarly, the neuroscience of habit formation shows that morning routines strengthen procedural memory pathways in the basal ganglia, making desirable behaviors more automatic and reducing the cognitive load required to perform them. Lowering the activation energy for healthy behaviors is essential in modern contexts where stress, decision fatigue, and information overload prevent individuals from sustaining well-intentioned lifestyle changes. A structured morning routine thus becomes both a psychological anchor and a neurological shortcut, simultaneously stabilizing identity and simplifying action. Within this conceptual framework, the 7 morning habits operate not as isolated tasks, but as interconnected variables within a systemic model of well-being. Hydration upon waking, for example, is not simply a physiological necessity, but a ritual that signals the transition from the dormant state of sleep into the active metabolic state required for daytime functioning. After several hours of fasting during sleep, the body experiences mild dehydration that can impair cognitive performance, blood viscosity, gastrointestinal motility, and even subtle aspects of mood. Studies have shown that mild dehydration of just 1 to 2% can negatively influence concentration, working memory, and subjective experience of fatigue. By rehydrating immediately after waking, individuals help restore plasma volume, support lymphatic function, and stimulate digestive process cues, thereby priming the body for nutrient assimilation and metabolic activity later in the morning. Hydration also influences thermoregulation and mitochondrial efficiency, which indirectly affect energy perception, a central determinant of productivity and emotional resilience throughout the day. Psychologically, the act of drinking water can serve as a symbolic first step, a cue within the habit loop that activates the sequence of subsequent routines. A second habit frequently emphasized in scientific discourse is exposure to natural morning light. Human circadian rhythms, governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus, rely heavily on light-based signals to regulate sleep-wake cycles, hormone release, and metabolic timing. Morning sunlight, rich in blue spectrum wavelengths, suppresses melatonin secretion and increases cortisol in a healthy diurnal pattern, an effect that promotes wakefulness, elevates alertness, and optimizes cognitive readiness. Exposure to daylight during the first hours after waking has also been shown to improve mood through the modulation of serotonin, a neurotransmitter integral to feelings of well-being. Interestingly, inadequate morning light exposure has been linked to circadian misalignment, delayed sleep phase disorders, seasonal mood disturbances, and increased risk of metabolic dysregulation. In contrast, consistent early-day sunlight acts as a stabilizing force for the biological clock, influencing sleep quality at night while simultaneously enhancing mental clarity and emotional equilibrium during the day. This simple yet potent habit exemplifies the interplay between environmental cues and physiological regulation, demonstrating that health is not solely a matter of personal effort, but also of harmonious alignment with natural biological rhythms. Mindful breathing or meditation represents a third habit whose benefits extend beyond immediate relaxation. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates involuntary bodily functions such as heart rate and digestion, oscillates between sympathetic, fight or flight, and parasympathetic, rest and digest, dominance. Modern lifestyles often create chronic sympathetic activation, leading to elevated cortisol levels, systemic inflammation, impaired immune function, and cognitive rigidity. Engaging in mindful breathing or meditative practices shortly after waking can help counteract this phenomenon by activating the vagus nerve and initiating a parasympathetic response. This shift not only reduces physiological stress markers but also improves attentional control, emotional regulation, and executive functioning. Neuroscientific research indicates that even short daily meditation sessions can strengthen prefrontal networks associated with decision-making, impulse control, and metacognitive awareness. When practiced in the morning, these cognitive benefits serve as a cognitive buffer against the attentional fragmentation and emotional volatility that often characterize modern work environments. Moreover, the intentional stillness and reflective awareness cultivated in morning meditation helps set a tone of deliberate focus rather than reactive urgency, reshaping how individuals engage with challenges, social interactions, and internal dialogues throughout the day. Physical movement is another foundational morning habit with wide-ranging implications. Whether through structured exercise, stretching, yoga, or even a brief mobility routine, activating the musculoskeletal and cardiovascular systems early in the day can improve metabolic health, neuroplasticity, and emotional stability. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, facilitates neurogenesis, and stimulates the release of endorphins and dopamine, biochemical factors associated with motivation, resilience, and subjective well-being. Additionally, physical activity helps regulate glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, reducing the risk of metabolic disorders while enhancing energy availability for cognitive tasks. Morning exercise in particular has been linked to improved sleep quality, as it reinforces circadian alignment by raising core body temperature early in the day and promoting its gradual decline at night. Movement also improves joint lubrication, muscular flexibility, and postural stability, countering the stiffness that often arises from prolonged sedentary behavior. Beyond physiological outcomes, morning exercise fosters psychological discipline, creating a sense of accomplishment and self-respect that cascades into enhanced motivation in other life domains. Nutritional habits comprise another essential dimension of morning health practices. A well-balanced breakfast, rich in fiber, lean protein, antioxidants, and healthy fats, provides the body with the substrates required for cognitive function, metabolic stability, and sustained energy release. Contrary to popular belief, the value of breakfast does not reside solely in caloric intake, but in its capacity to modulate blood glucose, influence gut microbiota, and regulate hormonal patterns that affect appetite throughout the day. A nutritious morning meal helps prevent mid-morning energy crashes, reduces the likelihood of impulsive snacking, and supports neurotransmitter synthesis, particularly acetylcholine and dopamine, which are critical for learning and motivation. Moreover, morning nutritional choices influence inflammation markers, oxidative stress, and long-term cardiovascular risk. The act of preparing and consuming breakfast can also serve as a mindful ritual that reinforces self-care and intentional living, contrasting sharply with the rushed, fragmented eating patterns that characterize many modern lifestyles. Equally relevant is the practice of mental organization, which includes activities such as reviewing goals, planning tasks, setting intentions, or engaging in reflective journaling. Cognitive science demonstrates that humans possess limited working memory capacity, and that clarity of intention significantly improves executive functioning. Morning planning helps externalize mental clutter, reducing cognitive load and freeing neural resources for creative and analytical tasks. It also enhances time management, decision-making, and emotional stability by providing a structured framework for navigating uncertainties. When individuals articulate their priorities early in the day, they are less susceptible to distraction, procrastination, and the attentional drain caused by multitasking. Furthermore, intention setting strengthens intrinsic motivation. Individuals who mentally rehearse their goals are more likely to follow through, not merely because of rational planning, but because the act of mentally simulating success activates neural pathways associated with reward expectation. Journaling, particularly gratitude journaling, has additional benefits. It enhances psychological well-being, reduces depressive symptoms, and increases resilience by shifting attentional biases toward positive stimuli. Another influential habit involves cultivating a moment of stillness or appreciation, a brief, deliberate pause in which one acknowledges the present moment. While seemingly subtle, this practice has profound implications within positive psychology and effective neuroscience. By focusing consciously on a feeling of appreciation, individuals activate areas of the brain associated with social bonding, empathy, and emotional regulation. Moments of appreciation reduce stress by inhibiting excessive amygdala activation, thereby improving one's capacity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively to daily challenges. This emotional grounding contributes to healthier interpersonal interactions, enhanced problem-solving abilities, and increased psychological flexibility. Appreciation also nurtures a sense of meaning and coherence, which research repeatedly associates with better mental and physical health outcomes. Even short reflections of gratitude can reduce inflammatory biomarkers, improve heart rate variability, and strengthen immune responses. Thus, a brief morning moment of appreciation is far from sentimental indulgence. It represents a scientifically supported intervention with systemic benefits. Importantly, the synergistic effect of these 7 habits extends beyond the sum of their individual benefits. When practiced together, they form a holistic health architecture that aligns the body's biological rhythms, enhances cognitive functioning, stabilizes emotional states, and promotes consistent behavioral patterns. Hydration initiates metabolic readiness. Sunlight entrains circadian rhythms. Meditation primes the brain for focus. Movement activates physiological systems. Nutrition fuels both body and mind. Planning structures, cognitive engagement, and appreciation nourishes emotional equilibrium. When these elements interlock, they create a stable routine that fosters resilience against stress, uncertainty, and environmental pressures. This morning framework also supports neuroplasticity. Consistent, repeated behaviors strengthen neural pathways that facilitate long-term habit maintenance. Over time, the entire routine becomes automatic, reducing reliance on willpower and transforming healthy living into a natural extension of daily identity. From a sociocultural perspective, morning routines also serve as personal boundaries within an increasingly accelerated and digitally mediated world. Many individuals reach for their smartphones immediately upon waking, subjecting themselves to a surge of external stimuli, messages, notifications, news, and obligations that erode autonomy before the day has even begun. Conversely, a structured morning routine creates a period of intentional autonomy in which individuals engage first with themselves rather than with external demands. This preserves cognitive purity, strengthens self-determination, and establishes a psychological buffer that protects mental health in the face of information overload. Sociological research on digital minimalism emphasizes that creating such protected time blocks is essential for reducing burnout, maintaining creativity, and fostering long-term well-being. The cumulative effect of these practices also extends into domains of personal growth, professional performance, and interpersonal dynamics. Individuals who maintain consistent morning routines often report greater emotional balance, higher productivity, improved interpersonal empathy, and stronger goal attainment. Their enhanced cognitive clarity enables more effective problem solving, while their emotional regulation supports constructive communication and conflict resolution. Furthermore, the physiological benefits, improved sleep, metabolic regulation, strengthened immunity, and reduced inflammation, contribute to long-term health outcomes that reduce the risk of chronic disease. The morning habits thus function as an integrative framework for lifestyle medicine, aligning with contemporary public health paradigms that emphasize prevention rather than intervention. It is worth noting that the efficacy of these habits does not depend on strict uniformity. The flexibility of implementation is essential for sustainability. Individuals may adapt the timing, intensity, or duration of these activities to accommodate different schedules, cultural contexts, personal preferences, or physiological needs. What matters is not the rigidity of the routine, but the consistency of intention. Even small adaptations, such as 5 minutes of stretching, a brisk walk in sunlight, a glass of water, or 2 minutes of mindful breathing, can yield measurable benefits when performed consistently. Behavioral research emphasizes that identity-based habit formation is more powerful than outcome-based habit setting. In other words, the goal is not to complete 7 tasks every morning, but to embody the identity of someone who values health, intentionality, and well-being. In sum, establishing a set of 7 morning habits represents a scientifically grounded, psychologically meaningful, and pragmatically adaptable pathway toward healthier living. These habits are not isolated tactics, but interconnected components of a comprehensive behavioral system that aligns mind and body with circadian rhythms, optimizes cognitive and emotional functioning, and fosters long-term resilience. The morning, as a temporal and psychological space, offers a powerful opportunity to shape the trajectory of each day and, cumulatively, the trajectory of one's life. By anchoring oneself in hydration, sunlight, mindful presence, movement, nourishment, deliberate planning, and appreciative awareness, an individual constructs a stable foundation that supports not only physical health, but also mental clarity, emotional well-being, and existential fulfillment. In an era defined by distraction, stress, and constant acceleration, these seemingly simple practices represent a profound reclaiming of agency, an assertion that one's health and life direction are not merely shaped by external forces, but can be consciously cultivated through the disciplined, intentional use of the morning hours. When practiced consistently, these habits become more than mere routines. They evolve into a transformative lifestyle philosophy that enables individuals to live with greater vitality, purpose, and balance each day.